Good evening. Welcome. Welcome to the Volcano Shelton show here this evening. Today is Thursday, June 11th. Our presentation coincides with the opening of the World Cup. From what I know, um, the first game played between Mexico and that of South Africa. Mexico won that game 2-0, and that's the opener. I know there's another game coming up momentarily. But my name is Volcano Shelton. I'd like to say thank you for joining me here tonight on the Volcano Shelton show. Can you please help me share the link? I would appreciate it. Just want to make sure that we got everything situated. So please help me share the link. Can you do that for me, please? So let me try to go ahead and share the link. As I said, this is a little bit of work by itself. But tonight, our conversation will center on gender based violence in Liberia, particularly against women. And this is happening not just Liberia, but across the universe. Africa is a common place for it. I wouldn't go graphic tonight, meaning I wouldn't show any of the videos. I might just show still pictures, but because it's so graphic. One of the videos I saw was very, very barbaric, horrendous. It saddens me to see men would gather around and treat women as they did in that video. It had to be one African country. Couldn't get the country, but it was two women who were thrown out there in the street and men attacking them, hitting them in the head, butt naked, to say the least, and guys all around them uh, taking photos, videotaping, vehicles passing by. No one stopped to intervene. Um, and this is just unfortunate that these things will be happening in Africa. Um, but as I said, it's just not only Africa, but it's common practice across the world. And oftentimes, when these things happen, it it depends on what the situation and circumstances. Sometimes the victim just suck it up and try to live with it. So tonight our conversation will dwell on some of the causes uh, for these things happening, and we'll also look at what government can do, especially in Liberia, to curb uh, such barbaric behavior and hopefully give some very serious punishment to those involved if found guilty, so that it can help to curb the behavior and have women protected by all means. So please help me share the video, share the podcast, invite others to join us here tonight. And this promises to be a good conversation. I will, of course, open the lines if folks want to weigh in on the conversation. I'll be willing to accept phone calls because this is a very important topic. And we don't want to lose out on the opportunity, um, you know, to discuss this because it's continued to trend, and we think that it's about time that this situation become addressed because it's not going well for women and children, but mainly women, and as I said, in Liberia. So again, welcome to the show. Please help me. I'm trying to get this stuff spread out there to as many people as possible. So I will hope that you can help me uh, with sharing the podcast. Um, and I'll say thank you so much if you do that for me. Trying to get this going. It's kind of difficult when you doing it yourself and at the same time trying to get it out there. But again, it's part of what we do. We want to do it because We think that it's necessary to address some of these things um, that are, just trending in our country. Give some attention to it. Not that attention is not being drawn, but how much attention and how much government is doing to address some of these things. What the speed, government is taking. The Ministry of Gender, the courts, and so forth. So, thank you for joining me. Thank you. Welcome to the show. Okay, as I said, at some point we'll open the lines to invite others here to probably contribute with a phone call or so. Um, but let's look at the topic here again. As I said, is gender-based violence, especially against women in Liberia, which is common occurrence, right? What are some of the causes, and what can government do to address this barbaric act? You and I know that gender-based violence is a complex matter. It's not just ordinary. It comes with a lot of, tributaries, as I will put it. But what drew me into this topic is the recent case of a 58-year-old woman named Regina Pata from Torokan town in Kalipo district in River G County. She was accused of practicing witchcraft. The community members allegedly claimed she was using supernatural powers to prevent the discovery of gold in the area. Can you imagine that? The woman is using supernatural power as a witchcraft to prevent the discovery of gold in the area. That's her crime. So when the people go dig for gold, they can't find the gold because the woman make the gold disappear. Is that what they're saying? And the allegation reportedly escalated, right? And it triggered widespread public outrage across Liberia and prompted calls for justice from citizens. So what we saw in that situation was it was alleged that a traditional healer, a described self-described traditional healer, or what we call country doctor, accused the woman of possessing dragon that was blocking the gold exploration, and the woman denied the allegation. So the woman got dragon. The dragon is blocking the discovery of gold in the area. Now you know that Liberia, the new thing is the gold mine, the gold dust. Everybody chasing gold and diamonds. So all these counties, it is believed that many of the areas in Liberia have gold, and so the locals want to give the community to would-be explorers or concessionaires to come and do business. So the point of contention is that this woman is blocking the discovery of gold because she's using what they consider a dragon. So as a result, what they did, they stripped her naked in the public. They physically assaulted and humiliated her, forced her to parade before the community members, both women, children, men, allegedly threatened her during the ordeal, subjected her to degrading treatment that was recorded live and later circulated on social media. And many of you who are listening now can recall just recently this thing took place in River G County. The circulation of the video triggered widespread public outrage across Liberia, prompting justice. So, what did the police do? The police responded. They launched an investigation and arrested 5 people allegedly connected to the incident, including the traditional healer accused of instigating the accusations against this woman. Police have stated that the investigation remains active and that anyone found criminally liable will face prosecution under the Liberian law. Why the case is significant? This case attracted national attention because it highlights gender based violence against women, human rights abuses linked to witchcraft accusations, and you know this is trending across Liberia, all in Nimba, Grand Jita. Men come and say he's a healer, he's a traditional doctor, he can discover that this person is witch, and then the people beat the person all in the community. The vulnerability of the elderly woman in some of these rural areas, rural communities, then the dangers of mob justice and public humiliation, which we see trending across Liberia, and the need for a stronger public education and law enforcement responses to superstition based violence. Because now we move from gender based violence to superstition based violence, which means that it doesn't have to be just a female, it can be a male who is accused of superstitions, you know. Um, so, from a legal and human rights perspective, if the allegations are proven, the acts described will not be protected by traditional or customary beliefs. They could constitute criminal offenses such as assault, criminal coercion, unlawful humiliation, and other violations under the Liberian law. So this whole traditional thing that people try to push the agenda of tradition and try to take the matters in their hand, this has to stop. This has to stop. This incident has become one of the most discussed recent gender based violence and human rights cases in Liberia because it combines violence against a woman, public degradation, and accusations of witchcraft issued that many advocates say require stronger government intervention and public awareness campaigns. Here are some of the gender based violence that we see, the causes of gender based violence in Liberia. And why this thing is happening? Because traditional gender inequality is one of the reasons why. Many communities still hold belief that men should dominate decision making in households and relationships. These unequal power dynamics can contribute to domestic violence, sexual abuse, and other forms of violence against women. Women are powerless in most African countries, and Liberia is of no exception. There are also other harmful cultural practices that's attributing to GBV. Certain traditional practices and social norms may discourage women from reporting abuse or may pressure families to resolve the matter privately rather than through the justice system. Victims are sometimes blamed for the violence committed against them. So when something happened in the home, especially steppa rapes stepdaughter and stepdaughter tell mom will get vexed and say you lying on my husband, you lying on my man, and then they will silence the girl and the girl will be quiet, but she will live with that abuse. When a man beats on his wife or his girlfriend or whatever and they're living together, and most of the time it not be husband and wife, or that just boyfriend and girlfriend thing. What the man just you know say, oh, let's take one room. That one room man just beating on woman, right? And when that happens, the woman is vulnerable. The family steps in, oh, the kind of thing. We got to talk it inside. And so let's talk it as a family. And that is the reason why the law does not get involved, because they cover it under the carpet and nothing is done to, address this from a legal perspective and hold that target or the person who is perpetrating the negative practice against the innocent person walks away scot free. And once that man touches on that woman, of course, it could be repeated. There's a high probability it will be repeated if it's not addressed through the legal system to hold him accountable. The other reason why we see gender based violence across Liberia again is poverty and economic dependence. Many women depend financially on their husbands, partners, or male, relatives. This dependence can make it difficult for victims to leave abusive relationships or seek legal action against rather the perpetrators. Because if the man is the breadwinner, he goes hustle, he comes to bring the food money, and you know Something happens, you didn't cook that day. Instead of asking questions, he gets mad, he beats on you. You're vulnerable. Because if you leave, where do you go to find food? Who will feed you? Who will take care of you? Many of our women don't have the capacity to do something for themselves, so they become dependent on the man. Some of them will do business, but to some degree, they still have to have a man to depend on. And that's the syndrome that leads to gender based violence, one of those prime causes, because of that dependence on the man's pocket. When I was growing up, we saw the man leaves, go work, come and leave full money. And he goes, when the time for Christmas clothes, he puts some money on the table and say, you'll buy your Christmas clothes, buy the one for the children, buy the one for yourself. And that's it. All he needed to do, pay the rent, provide food, pay the children's school fees, and he's the kingpin. And whatever he says, it has to go. And if the woman challenges, she's practically vulnerable and might have to face some kind of, fight. So, weak enforcement of the law is another thing. You know, Liberia has laws against rape, domestic violence, and rape and other forms of abuse. However, challenges such as limited police resources, slow court processes, corruption, and inadequate victim support services can hinder the effective enforcement. We know Liberia, there's a lot of vulnerabilities in the country. Almost every sector in Liberia has a problem. Needless to say, law enforcement, the judiciary, the court system, they're underfunded. They don't have the resources to address some of these things. For instance, this case that took place in River G, can you imagine bringing that case from River G to Monrovia for trial? Witnesses, you know, perpetrators, victims. There's a lot to get that tried in Liberia. So if you move it to River G's capital or to Tuzon, Grand Jita, wherever, or Chien, the old name Chien, which is now Zwedru, you tend to go through a lot of cost, and that is why sometimes the enforcement of law becomes weak. Then there's a legacy of civil conflict. Our civil war led the system to break down. Not that these things were not happening before the war, but to some degree, it was very minimal. It was not widespread. People just couldn't beat on people and get away with it because there was, stability in the country. But the war exposed many people to violence and normalized certain forms of behavior and certain forms of abuse. It's become normal. Sexual violence was widely used during the conflict. You and I know. Rebels would just come and take somebody's daughter and carry and say, this one is my wife, and do what he wants to do. Some of the social consequences continue to affect communities today. Some of these very people who felt that they had the power to do things, they remain within the community. They still have that mindset, and they continue to do the same crazy stuff they were doing. Some of them never had a healthy relationship. And the young people who are vulnerable, young women who are vulnerable and looking for stability, go into relationships with these abusers and they're stuck. It becomes the Stockholm syndrome. Another issue here that is relatable to the cause is the lack of education and awareness. Limited education about women's rights, right? Consent, to consent. What that means, if a man wants you, you have to agree to it. If a man wants to be intimate with you in bed, you have to agree. Even if you're in a relationship, if you say, I'm tired tonight, he has no right to put his hands on you. If you say, I don't want to do anything intimate tonight, he has no power to put his hands on you, whether even in marriage, because it comes across as violence, it comes across as rape. So the consenting nature of any kind of intimacy must take place. And gender equality can contribute to GBV. Some perpetrators may not fully understand the legal and social consequences of their actions, while victims may not know their own rights or the available services that they can access to address their continued abuse. So the government has a lot of work to do. The Ministry of Gender has a lot of work to do. These kinds of things should be taught. It should become a part of our national curriculum in school. Because if our youth population, if our population is so youthful, then these young people now who are growing up to inherit this country need to begin to understand these things. If they don't understand these things, it's just going to be a vicious circle. They're going to come up growing right into it and not even having a structured society that will address this. So there has to be a part of our curriculum in school. Public awareness campaign, all of these things are very, very critical. Then you have alcohol and substance abuse. It's an attributing factor to GBV. What do I mean? Alcohol and drug abuse are often associated with increased incidents of domestic violence and sexual assault. Although they do not cause violence by themselves, they can increase aggression and reduce self-control. The guy goes to the store, to the bar. He sees a beautiful girl, he tries to talk to her, and she doesn't want to yield. He starts to insult her. Sooner or later, he just walk up to her and start to collar her and put hands on her. We see that happen right in the community. Guys sitting down, a woman pass, one of them try to make passes. If the person don't say something, look at your death, they start to curse you. These things happen every day in Liberia. That is why the education for this has to take place. People need to understand what we consider boundaries in developed society. If you speak to someone they don't want to respond, don't say nothing. Let them go. You don't have to stand up and start insulting them. You have no right. You don't know how to eat. You don't know how to sleep. You don't know how to wear clothes. You don't know anything about them. So you can't just jump out in the street and start to insult people because you try to or a woman because you try to talk to her and she didn't respond to you. You have to be impaired by alcohol. You have to be impaired by substance abuse for you to do stupid stuff like that. And some people don't even have to. They just got dry face and act disrespectful. And these things have to stop. Impunity for perpetrators, and that's what we're talking about. When offenders are not investigated, when they're not prosecuted, when they're not punished, it can create a perception that violence against women will go unpunished and encourage repeated offenses. That's what happens. So the example I give, a beautiful woman walking down the street, guy sitting down, one of them, hey, beautiful, can I get your number? The person, look at that one, and you start cursing. But if that woman take you to the law and the law acts and punishes you for what we call public nuisance and disrespect, then that would be curbed. That would be something to address the situation. Then you have early enforced marriage. Early enforced marriage, where the man is older and the girl is probably underage. Of course, what do you think? That man sees himself as a father and at the same time as a husband. He must begin to, do things to her. So in some areas, girls may face pressure to marry at a young age. And early marriage can expose them to domestic violence, sexual abuse, and limited educational opportunities. This happens in many cultures, and it's happening right in Liberia. Then you have sexual exploitation and abuse. Women and girls may be vulnerable to exploitation by individuals in position of authority, including in school where teachers are trying to, you know, push the young woman into a relationship, threatens I will fail you if you don't, you're not paying the person's school fees because you like them, you threaten them that you will fail them, they will not uh, graduate from your class or they will not pass from your class, and you hold them hostage until they yield to you. Workplaces, communities, particularly where economic hardship is widespread. These are some of the reasons why we have uh, common gender-based violence in Liberia. So the common forms of gender-based violence in Liberia are domestic and intimate partner violence, rape and assault, sexual harassment, teacher-student relationship using quid pro quo exploitation, child enforced marriages, psychological and emotional abuse, economic abuse, controlling access to money or resources, and human trafficking and sexual exploitation. These things are happening right in Liberia. So there's a lot of work to be done, a whole lot of work to be done. If you're just joining us here, this is Volcano Shelton on the Volcano Shelton Show. I'd like to welcome you wherever you are. Please help me share the link, invite others to join us here tonight. We're discussing gender based violence, especially against women in Liberia, which is a common occurrence. And what are some of the causes? We've just discussed many of those causes, but now we're going to talk about what government's role in curbing this uh, barbaric and crude behavior on the part of those who are the perpetrators. Something needs to be done. This is, you know, um, something that has to be looked at seriously because, again, as I said, our youthful population cannot grow up accepting this to be common practice because then what happens in the long run? It becomes rooted in the family, in the society, and in the communities. My broadcast is on Thursdays. Every Thursday, I'm here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So again, I just like to welcome you. If you uh, are there, please help me share the link. Love me, like me, follow us here on Facebook. We're also on YouTube and we are on LinkedIn. I just want to remind you quickly the World Cup started today, as I said, and I think another game should be coming on shortly. But uh, South Africa lost to Mexico in the opener 2-0. And just quickly to give you that update on the sports. But let's go back to the conversation. What can be done? Addressing GBV in Liberia requires a stronger enforcement of existing laws. We have laws to address these things. We do have laws. But what is critical is the enforcement piece. We need public education on gender equality and women's rights. This has to be a part of our national curriculum. Civic, if you all remembered, I don't know if they're still teaching civic in Liberia, but civic was a course that we did in Liberia. Okay? So that has to form part of the curriculum. Then we also have to have in economic empowerment programs for women. Women need to be empowered, given something for themselves, ability, skill set, work, so that there can not be this uh, 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 continued dependency on the man's pocket. Better support services for survivors. Like that woman, she's traumatized. The woman in River G who was just stripped naked in her in her local clan, in her town. How does she walk around with clothes on when everyone there were looking at her private parts, exposed, beating on her? This woman would need shelter. She would need counseling. She would need legal aid to bring those perpetrators to justice. And even the bringing of perpetrators to justice, it doesn't help heal her from that trauma. You and I know there's a lot of scars in different ways in Liberia as a result of our civil war and the constant trauma. So something like this requires a lot of support. Community engagement and traditional and religious leaders need to come together and have this conversation. We can use tradition to continue to make a mess and we say that it's part of tradition. What power does this woman have to hide the gold? You say the woman make the gold disappear in the village. She has a dragon that will make the gold disappear when you go to look for gold. We need to increase reporting mechanisms and victim protection. Government needs to do these things. Increase the mechanism. Protect the victim. Protect the victim. Because I don't think that woman wants to live in her village anymore. She's not going to be welcome back there. And especially if some of the folks from the village were the perpetrators that they're going to try and put in jail, their families are behind. Some of them were breadwinners for their homes. So going to jail now takes away the livelihood of the families they left behind. But of course, they have to bear the punishment for what they did. But when that woman comes back, do you think she has a place to stay? No. That is why it's important for government to do much more rather than, just consider it a waste on or you waste water on dog back, like we say in the Liberian parlance. So reducing gender-based violence will require both legal action and long-term social change that promotes respect, equality, and accountability throughout the Liberian society. This is a critical piece, very critical piece. So, we talk about strengthening law enforcement and justice. The government should ensure that the perpetrators are investigated, prosecuted, and punished promptly. Here are some of the key actions: increase fundings for the specialized units of the Liberia National Police Force that handle sexual and gender based violence cases. You got to put money in the budget for that. You need to establish and expand specialized GBV courts and fast track rape cases. You got to put that in the judiciary budget, and then you got to push those cases fast. The more we put perpetrators in jail, punish them for the act, the potential is that it will reduce. But once we drag on the case, it lingers on until the perpetrator gets free. He goes right back and does the same thing. We need to train police officers, prosecutors, and judges on how to handle these kinds of cases because they are sensitive. So they have to have the training to understand the sensitivity and handle it with professionalism. We need to reduce case backlogs and prevent out of court settlements in serious crimes and rapes. We can't always say, oh, you know what, we'll take it home, we'll go solve the problem home. No. In many developed society, the government acts on behalf of the victim, even if the victim is so afraid. That has to happen in Liberia. No taking the case outside of the judicial system and take it home to go solve it. This is not community chairman coming talk something where they beat the woman so badly. No, it's not possible. So let me show you just. I know you guys remember this situation the other day. You remember this, right? That's the case. That's the case involving the young woman at the red light who wore her own clothes, and manager came from nowhere and jumped on this woman and attack her all over the place. Right? You remember this? Police came in and still the guys were violent. I know there was some arrests that went on. We don't know the status of that case. But this woman wore what she wanted to wear is her clothes. How can you come from nowhere and jump on the woman? You're married to her. She's not your girlfriend. She's not your child. So that's the kind of lawlessness we're talking about. So you know, there must be quick, swift actions to curb situations like this. Seriously, invest in public education, as I said, and prevention framework. You got to change the attitudes of the people. It's critical to reducing violence. Launch nationwide awareness campaigns through radio, television, social media, and community meetings. The community chairman need to be involved. Call the elders in the community and say, hey, this guy put hand on this woman. She brought a complaint. We're not going to handle it in our house. We're going to refer her to the Ministry of Gender or to the Liberia National Police. Let them handle it. That in itself will remind people that you can't just do something and think you're going to get away with it. You got to teach concepts such as consent, respect, and gender equality in schools. We have to train our young women to understand their responsibilities. That if you don't give consent, anyone puts hand on you, that's abuse, that's harassment. Women need to know that, especially the young people in school. There must be respect. Then also engage men and boys as partners in preventing violence. Those boys and young men who are having relationship, they need to understand, they need to know the red line. They can't cross the red line. Can't put hand on a woman because you live together. No. Then you have work with traditional and religious leaders to challenge harmful norms that tolerate these kinds of situations. Those norms that tolerate abuse, we go under the tradition banner and say, oh, that's our tradition. No, our tradition doesn't call for that. Then you got to promote women economic empowerment. Economic dependence often traps women in abusive relationships, as I said. When a woman can fend for herself financially, when her capacity is not built, she doesn't have the education, she doesn't have a job, and she goes in relationship with a man who is hardworking but abusive, she's trapped. She's trapped because a woman wants protection. She wants roof over her head. She wants somebody who can put food on the table, who can take care of the basic needs. And if this man is doing it, of course, what? He has more power over the woman. So we need to expand vocational training and job opportunities for women. We need to carry this exercise in the communities. Tell young women, go to school, learn. If you don't get a degree, get a vocational training. Go do pastries, go do tailoring. Go do the things that you can do that will put money in your pocket. Improve women's access to credit and to be able to establish small businesses so they can build financing for themselves. Support female entrepreneurship programs. This is critical. That's the only way we can empower women. Strengthen labor protections against women in the workplace. You got to do that. And not just in the workplace, but in school. But in school. Then, what do we do here? We address violence in school. It's important. We have to. School should be a safe environment for girls, right? The school should be a safe environment for girls. So, we need to enforce zero tolerance policies for sexual harassment and exploitations by teachers and school staff. Zero tolerance. Some of the jobs we have in America, there's zero tolerance. There's certain things you can't do. As soon as it happens, what happens? You get terminated and you be turned over to the authority for persecution. That has to happen in the school setting. Enforce zero tolerance policies for sexual harassment and exploitation by teachers and school staff. You can't trap somebody in the class, the school that grades you, say, I will fail you because you don't love to me. You will never pass my class. What nonsense is that? Who gave you that authority? The person is paying the school fees and you hold them back only because you want to have a relationship with them. Establish confidential reporting systems in the school. Students should feel empowered that when a teacher acts like a dumb and try to harass them, they should be able to go and report it, and action should be taken. Action should be taken immediately. But of course, sometimes all the teachers, including the principal, they're all in a cahoot. So who do the student go to? So they need to establish it outside, provide systems and means where students can go outside of the school setting to make their report. We also need to train educators and child protection and gender workers on the sensitivity of this kind of nature. We need to keep girls in school through scholarships and support programs. That's where we can address some of these things in the school setting. We need to also improve the data collection. It's critical with accountability. Reliable data rather helps target resources effectively. If we don't collect data, then how do we know how many of these cases and what resources we can put in? Create a national gender based violence database. Publish annual reports on gender based violence cases, persecutions, and conviction. So, what we want to know what happens with the woman at the red light. We also want to know what happens to the woman in River G County. We want to know what happened to the perpetrators who were persecuted, who were convicted, what crime, what punishment are they going to bear? This is critical. Monitor the performance of institutions responsible for responding to gender based violence. So, the National Police, the Gender Ministry, the Ministry of Justice, all of these institutions need to be monitored so that they can be held responsible for ensuring that they're addressing these matters. We want to also strengthen community based protection and prevention. Community involvement is essential because oftentimes these things happen at the community level. We want to support anti GBV committees. Okay? We train community leaders to identify and respond to abuse. You can't just be community chairman and you passing around. When people bring matters of this kind of grave nature, it has to be addressed and addressed with immediacy. Encourage community reporting of violence and exploitation. Promote mediation only for minor family disputes, not for criminal offenses such as rape, humiliation, you putting your hand on somebody you don't feed. And even if you are feeding them, does that give you the right? So, how government can address the root causes? Long-term reduction of gender-based violence requires addressing underlying social conditions. We need to reduce poverty. It's critical. And unemployment. Because again, as I said, most of our victims are trapped on a dependence syndrome. The man is taking care of her. She has no other means, so she will endure the violence. So we need to reduce poverty and unemployment. We need to expand educational opportunity for girls, combat alcohol and substance abuse through public health programs, promote gender equality in Liberia, in business, and in community leadership. That's what we need to do. So you have some priority actions for the next 5 years. This is what we expect the government to do in the next 5 years. If Liberia were to focus on the most impactful measures, the priorities should be: one, increase persecution and conviction. Okay, the rates for rape and domestic violence. We need to increase persecution and conviction. Okay, we need to increase it. We need to work on it so that it can deter would-be perpetrators. We need to establish survival shelters and support centers in all counties. I told you earlier, how can that woman go back to her village in River G when the whole village ganged up against her on the premise of being a witchcraft and having dragon that prevents them from seeing the gold that they're mining? How does she go back? She has to be placed in a shelter where she's protected. So the government needs to build these kinds of shelter. What is gender ministries doing? I will have to do another show on the gender ministries budget to see what's there, what the line items are, to determine what is going to something like this. Because if you are a gender ministry, then you should have what we consider safe houses. We should have shelters across the country that will protect victims. And you should have victim protection programs. So that's important. That should be part of your line item, the things that your ministry should be doing. So money shouldn't just go to salaries. should go. It should be for service. Then we want to launch a nationwide education campaigns targeting men and boys, because as I said, oftentimes these young men are the ones who are doing it. Boys, because of the construct of our population today, more than 60% of our young people make up the population. And if we can straighten this now, what happens in the long term when this country is given to the young people? Gender based violence will continue on. So we need to begin that kind of education now in the community at the highest spot. Instead of talking politics all day, you go to the Palawa Hut at the University of Liberia. These are some of the things we should be talking. These are some of the things the legislature should be addressing. Instead of the topic being all about brown envelope, they should put these kinds of things on the floor, enact laws. We know that there are laws on the book, but hold those who should be implementing the laws responsible, or laws rather responsible. That is why we have oversight committees within the legislature. But everybody shows up to work and just make noise and leave and then get paid. And it's not just in the legislature, it's in many of the institutions in the country. When you look at the component of the Liberian budget, nearly 70% or more goes to salary. And if all that money goes to salaries, then what is left there to address some of these national issues in the country? It is important that we can continue to play as if to say we don't know, what we want. We can't do that. Welcome, Samuel Flomo Jr. I see you watching from Banga City, Bon County. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us here. Okay? So we can continue to play hanky panky on the budget. Everything should go into people's pocket. So yes, we need to strengthen the economic opportunities for women and girls. And how do we do that? I talked about small business empowerment, small microfinance loan that will give young women the opportunity to start their own business so that they can be removed from that economic dependency on man. Go to vocational schools, do some training to be able to get the kind of skills necessary. In developed societies, most of anything you do, you get paid. If you are a good housekeeper, you get paid well. You can start a small cleaning business. You just got to be honest. You can't go into people's house to go clean, then you taking things and putting it in your bag. You go into people's house to clean just how you met the things and how you clean and leave, and you get paid. So people can start those kind of small businesses, right? There are a lot of people now doing well in Liberia who need cleaning crews to come and do cleaning. I myself need cleaning in Liberia if I can find someone honest to clean my place. So sometimes these impediments are as a result of our dishonesty. So there's a lot of things that people can do in Liberia to be self-employed. But no, they want to go to the club, they want to sit down and fix hair and nails and put empty handbag on the shoulder and walk up and down Broad Street like the song says. Some people era that will be walking up and down Broad Street. But there's a lot of things that women can do in Liberia outside of just this everyday fix your hair, dress up, LID brunch, Sandy bar, Sandy club, private bar, fusion, passion, all these things. They're not helping you. That is why you're being abused, because you're not empowering yourself. The time you take to hang all over the clubs, everywhere, every little event, you could be in school, you could be doing something for yourself to empower yourself and to learn skills. Many women in developed societies don't depend on men. They go to work, they earn their own honest money, and they live their lives. So as a result, men would better put their hands on woman, because if the woman is working for her own money, she's empowered. But no, not in Africa, particularly Liberia today. Everybody wants to depend on somebody's pocket. but they find pleasure in doing the things that are not empowering them and not getting them anywhere. So as a result, they create that dependency syndrome on the man's pocket, and that's why it sometimes leads to gender-based violence. Because again, as I said, if a man is taking care of your everything, everything, what do you expect? Then we need to improve the police and judicial capacity to handle these kind of cases and handle them effectively. When perpetrators, let me say this, when perpetrators constantly face consequences for their action, survivors receive protection and communities reject violence as unacceptable, gender based violence can significantly be reduced. I repeat this. When perpetrators constantly face consequences, when you do it, you bother with the law takes its course of action, they persecute you if you're found guilty, they penalize you, whatever that crime committed and the punishment, they go concomitantly and you do your time and you pay for your time, for your behavior rather, that will reduce gender-based violence. When survivors receive the right protection, when survivors become empowered to report their cases and not allow the family to say, oh, let us solve it from inside. Oh, you know the man's good to you, the man will take care of you. No, let the perpetrator be able to go to the law. I mean, the victim be able to go to the law and the perpetrator be held accountable. That will reduce gender based violence. And when communities come together and reject this behavior, instead of taking video and running around the place, when people are abusing a woman, when men gather around a woman, then you're there on social media taking video, they're abusing a woman, no one intervenes. This is barbaric. This is crude. This is primitive behavior. You don't have to record everything. You need to step in right away. Now, if you're recording for the purpose of evidence, that's different. But when you just go live, that's disgrace for that person who is the victim. How do you think that person thrive in that community anymore? So communities need to come together and reject this kind of behavior. The same way you form watch team to curb armed robbery in your community, you should be able to come together, put committees together that will address gender-based violence, hold perpetrators accountable. It is your responsibility as a community to do that because it will hold those. And oftentimes people think that the government knows everything. No, just like we blame the president for everything, we can't blame the judiciary system for everything if the judiciary system has no in the matter. We can't blame the police for everything if the police has no in the matter. Many of these things start in the family, which is the smallest unit in the society, and then it spreads out into the communities. That is why we have close knit communities in Liberia. We have community chairmen, we have community leaders. These are the people that's supposed to say, no, 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 not in our town, not in our locale, not in our environment, not in our communities, that will tolerate gender based violence. You put your hand on your woman, we'll deal with you according to the law. And it's vice versa. It's vice versa. Because they got some women who can beat men to hell. So it's not just the man beating the woman, they got women who can beat men. And we know that. So it's vice versa. So communities must take the action to say this is unacceptable. This will reduce it. The government role is to lead the effort through strong laws, effective enforcement, adequate funding, and sustained public education. That's the government's role. In all of this, that's the government's role. Strong laws, implement it, enforce it, put funding into the institutions responsible for addressing this matter, and do a lot of public education. So it's not just on the government alone, as I said. The community dwellers, they need to play their part. The family needs to play its part. You can't say that to be beating on your child and you say, you're not talking like family. If the man know he loves your wife, I mean your child rather, as his wife, and he having children, you want the children to see this kind of thing, and then you're talking in house? No, this is a matter of law enforcement. So I hope this broadcast here tonight lays some basis for you to understand that gender-based violence is a serious matter in Liberia today. We can't continue to tolerate this kind of behavior, especially people who just grab onto somebody and just start beating them up because they don't want to deal with you. You meet a woman dressed in her clothes. If you thought she was half naked, that's not your business. Turn your face and keep going. If you speak to a beautiful girl walking down the road, the girl don't say hello or she doesn't respond, don't go cussing her up. It's not necessary. Remember, you got mom, you got pa, I mean, a sister, and you got female family. Guys sitting down. Teachers, leave these students alone. You went to school to impart knowledge. Don't be threatening your students and telling them, say, if they sleep with you, you will fail them. They will not graduate from your class. This is at every level. The universities in the country, the elementary school, the junior high schools, the high schools. These things have to stop. If we can address it now and put the mechanisms in place, imagine how profound it's going to be when our country is inherited by the young people. You and myself may not be around to see what type of Liberia that's going to be, but I can guarantee you if we don't address it now, that's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to be. Seriously, that's what it's going to be. So I'll just post the number here if anyone wants to call quickly to contribute. If you know of any situation that you want to weigh in on, um, I'm here to accept your call. Let me check on one other clip I wanted to show um, quickly. So here's another clip. Here's another clip. This is the clip where this woman was beaten accordingly by the man standing in the back and almost killed her. See, that's another clip. That's another clip. It said a beautiful young Liberian girl identified as 23-year-old Wale Myers was reportedly beaten to death by her boyfriend in a heartbreaking act of violence that has left many people across Liberia in shock and anger. Just recently in May, this stuff happened on May 1st, 2026. In an emotional message shared on Monday, which was May 5th, the grieving uncle vowed to fight until justice is served for his niece. You see, the woman uh, was fighting for her life, as you can see, on life support. I mean, look at that. Look at the man in the background. I don't know if you can see him. Look at that funny man. Huh? You see? So it's unfortunate. These things happen. It's very unfortunate. So we can't continue to tolerate such behavior in the country. It has to stop. Government needs to take strong, strong measures. But I just want to thank all of you for joining me tonight. It was a pleasure having you here. We're going to call it a night since I didn't, see anyone trying to call in. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to have uh, share this time with me. My name is Volcano Shelton. This is the Volcano Shelton Show. Hope you can join me again next Thursday same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be here. Um, and on Tuesday, the Issues Room, our sister program, will take place at 7 p.m. Alfonso Yono and I will be here with another thought provoking conversation. Until then, have a great rest of your week. Don't forget the World Cup started today. The games are on. Many countries. I know 10 countries representing Africa. I believe, if I recalled well, is Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt in the north. We have Cape Verde, we have Ghana, we have Ivory Coast, we have uh, DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, we have uh, South Africa, and I believe there are other countries, but yeah, we have 10 countries representing the continent. So let's watch the games and let's have fun. Until then, have a good rest of your night, and we'll catch up momentarily. Good night.